Hello and welcome to a video in which I will demonstrate setup for the internal Dolby Atmos render in Pro Tools. This is Pro Tools version 2024.3. It's current and up to date as of the moment. And while you can use the external render to do Dolby Atmos with Pro Tools and get quite a lot of features, it is actually kind of more convenient and quick to use the internal renderer, though limited in features. So this video is kind of made for NESCOM students who are exploring Atmos and doing early mixes and don't need the full feature set of the external renderer. So let's set it up. First thing to do is here at NESCOM, and this video is actually made in my house, not NESCOM, so some slight differences here that you will see in the video. But for playback engine, at NESCOM you want to set it to HDX. When you're using the external renderer, you do set this to Dolby Audio Bridge. But for the internal render, set it right to HDX. My video here shows HD Native Thunderbolt because I am at home. So with that done, other thing you probably want to do is turn on UConn. Make sure you can talk to the S6 console. You can make it visible up here. Make UConn visible and then click the green button there, which I'm not going to do at the moment because I don't have an S6 in front of me. Okay, next thing. Set your Pro Tools session frame rate to 24 frames per second. You can do this under Setup and then Session. And I've already done it here, and it's timecode rate 24 frames per second. So set that to 24 FPS. All right, next thing. Next thing's all about the I/O and a set of steps you want to go through exactly in the I/O. So go up to Setup, I/O, and do this in the order I'm explaining, and things will work. Go to your inputs, and I would, as I suggest in most of my classes, delete everything and start fresh. Obviously, if you're opening up a session that already has configured I/O, you may not want to delete everything, but if you're starting fresh, click on your input here and do a select all, Command A here, and delete. So you can either hit the delete button down here, delete path, or you can hit delete on your keyboard. For outputs, I'm going to do the same thing. Another way to select all is Option click on the list, and I'm going to hit the delete key on the keyboard, and it's going to warn me the monitor path is going to be deleted, and I don't really care because I'm going to make it again in a moment. Bus, I'm going to select all my buses, delete those, and I'm going to go to the Dolby Atmos renderer, and I am going to turn it on to Dolby internal render. So turn Dolby on Atmos on here and set it to internal render, and I'm going to delete all of these. I have found that it's best to go back to the left on the tabs here and select your inputs and just default, make some inputs in case you need to record something. For your outputs, this is where it's important that you set your default output to your monitoring system. Here at NESCOM, we have a 7.1.4 system, so the default format has been set, or you need to set to 7.1.4. The path order should be the Dolby configuration because our channel count at NESCOM configured to Dolby. If you have it differently, you may need to change it there. And then at this point, hit default, and it will make this 12-channel wide 7.1.4 monitoring path that you're going to monitor through. It's making a couple other stereo ones as well for some headphone re-renders. You can learn about that later. Go to buses. I would say make a default here. This gives you some buses to play with for doing mixing and reverbs and that sort of thing. Now back to Dolby here, and you're on internal render. At this point, hit default, and it will make a bunch of objects that you can use in the mixing process. Over here on the right, loudness re-render, definitely want to have that set to 5.1. The way Atmos does loudness measurement for your metering is it down mixes the full 128 objects down to 5.1 mix and renders, and then checks loudness with that, so you need that set. For your headphone re-render, you can set it to either 2.0 or 5 or binaural, depends on what you're trying to do. You're probably not going to need this now at all, so it really doesn't matter. You can leave it on binaural or 2.0, whatever you need to do. Go back to bus. On bus, very important down here, set your default output bus. So any mono and stereo track or aux input or anything you create just kind of automatically goes to the bed. which if you don't know much about Atmos, that's kind of your generic starting place for mixing bus. So I'm going to set it so that mono elements I make, tracks and aux ends, will automatically go to the bed 1 and 2. And I'm going to do the same for stereo. I'm going to send it into the bed 1 through 10. So you'll be able to go right to the bed with anything new you make, and it will work. At this point, we should be good to go. It's always good to confirm under outputs that you have your speaker little icon there. That is your monitor path, which is set here to your main monitor outputs. Okay, good. With all that set, I'm going to hit OK. And moving on, you're going to want to make it visible for any track or anything you create here. Let me just create a track here. And you want to see this stuff, which is your objects and your bed assignment. In order to do that, you will need to go down here to the lower left and make sure object is turned on. In stereo mixing, you don't need to see that object, so you won't be familiar with that if you're completely new to Atmos. Okay, going to delete that. Now I'm going to create a loudness monitoring aux input. So I'm going to Command-Shift-N here, and I'm going to make a 5.1 aux input. And this is for loudness. You can name it whatever you want. I'm going to name it loudness. If you're doing it for my assignment, why don't you name it loudness too? Turn the fader down so it's not going to create any feedback loop. I would actually take its output and feed it to no output. We don't really need to hear this. We only need to see it. So no output will keep feedback loops at bay. As for its input, pick re-renders loudness 5.1, which we did configure in our I/O. So now this will be a 5.1 re-render of the Atmos mix. And this is where you want to put your loudness metering. At NESCOM, I recommend students use the U-Lean. It's a free plugin. They actually have a nice upgrade, paid version of it as well, but the free version works really well for 5.1, and you just need to make sure you set the channel path order correct. You want to switch it to ITU. That's the most similar to the Dolby standard we use at school. And if you're in Control-C working away, which you should be, you should also instantiate the TC Electronic Clarity M. We have a 5.1 model of it there sitting on top of the console. It's really nice. Please set that as well. And I would also, by default, set these two guys on here. So it's going to reset and follow transport. You can configure them later. You may even want to hit the play button to make it work. It's not working for me. I have a Clarity M at home, but it's stereo only, so this one is not going to actually show up. Anyway, with all that said, we should now have loudness monitoring. Next thing is to actually kind of play with this and see if the system is working. So what I am going to do is make a new mono aux input. And this is just going to be pink noise, and I'm going to turn its fader down so I don't have to hear it. And I am going to put a plugin on here, other signal generator. I'm going to set it to pink noise. So now it's playing pink noise. And if I turn on the right speakers in my room, I should be able to hear this. And I am. And it's hearing it because the track automatically went to the bed, which was the default output that I set earlier. Now, if I pan it left, I hear it the left. I pan it the right, I hear the right. I don't hear it behind me. And that's because you need to make sure you go off to the Dolby Atmos renderer, and it kind of defaults. Let me do that again slowly. Window, Dolby Atmos render. This is the internal render. And it's been defaulting to 2.0, which is stereo. And this is where you say, I'd actually rather monitor in 714. And so at this point, I should be able to pan around and see it kind of coming out of the different outputs over here. And in the next video, I will explain objects. And once you get to objects, you'll be able to watch it pan around in here, which is kind of cool. But I can see that it's panning. Now, to be in all honesty here, I'm looking down on my HDIO. I am seeing it coming out of multiple outputs, but I don't have multiple speakers set up. So I can't actually hear this, but I know it's doing it. And that's why when monitoring in binaural and hearing it in binaural, maybe hearing it in my headphones and doing a little bit of the Atmos thing that way would come into play. But you're not going to be doing that here in Control-C at NESCOM. You've got an actual discrete speaker system, so leave it on 714. One side note about this render, I don't know if it's just me and my laptop, but I'm having issues seeing the windows, seeing the drop-down buttons on this render, and I have to reboot Pro Tools and then they show up. I had to reboot it one time before I made this video. So if you're having a problem and you can't see these selections, just try rebooting Pro Tools and it will probably work fine for you. Okay, I hope this video helps you get into using the Dolby Atmos render and really kind of exploring the internal Dolby Atmos render in Pro Tools, kind of exploring Atmos because it's very exciting. All right, have a great day. I hope this helps. Have a good night. Bye-bye.